For NC State to contend for some championships in 2024, they're going to have to win a couple big ones. And historically, the big ones have given NC State the issue.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. If you're still in the market for Tennessee tickets, it's coming up quick. Head on over to Gametime. As always, terms apply. Happy Wednesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, we're going to start here on Wednesday talking about NC State and their ability to win the big one. I say this because we only really have two big games on our schedule this year. No surprise. It's against Tennessee in Charlotte, neutral site game, and then on the road at Clemson just 2 weeks after that one. Historically, under Dave Doeren, NC State has stumbled a bit when talking about the big ones. Doeren has secured 7 ranked wins in 11 years, but when you're looking at games against the SEC, he's 1-5, and games against Clemson, he's just 2-8. For NC State to get to where they want to be at the end of the season, meaning an ACC championship and then hopefully the CFP after that, you're going to have to win more than likely one or both of these big-time games against the SEC and Clemson.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The reality is NC State has not found ways to win these meaningful and impactful games in the past at a high clip. But here's the thing. This is a new NC State team. This team has to be new, has to be different, has to do things that they've never done before if they want to get to heights that they've never seen before. If this team is, we'll get a little lead and we'll take our foot off the gas. We're whatever we've been doing in the past has been working. No need to listen. You have to find a way to be different in order to get different results. This team wants to be more successful than any NC State team that we've seen in recent history. Good. Go get it. Go be that successful. Go do the things it takes to win these types of games. Because at the end of the day, if you look back on this season and you say, well, we won every game outside the big one, you could end up double-digit winners. Sure. You could end up in a situation where you still have a special year, but how much more special would it be if you find a way to dominate in these games? How much more special would it be if you find a way to give yourself some cushion to say, you know what? We shouldn't lose to a Cal on the road, but if it happens, that's not the end of our season. We're not done at that point. This team has to be different, point blank period. They have to find a way to show up against Tennessee. They have to find a way to show up against Clemson. They have to find a way to show up in general, but these two games especially, this team has to be special.
There is a reality where NC State makes it to the ACC championship with 2 losses. It's probably much less likely. It is a real situation that could happen barring some ACC chaos. But also 2 losses, they could find themselves in the college football playoff. Again, probably less likely, and that's where you need to help yourselves out in just going out and winning these big-time games. Talking about the game down in Charlotte against Tennessee, neutral site in general has also posed some problems for NC State in the past. We still have those bad memories of playing Tennessee down in Atlanta. We saw South Carolina recently in Charlotte. I believe that was 2017. Feel like we let that one slip away. The neutral site games, in addition to playing SEC teams, have been a struggle for us. Now, in terms of the crowd down in Charlotte, I would probably expect something like 60-40 in favor of Tennessee. Tennessee fans are insane, and they're going to pack out Bank of America Stadium. But I expect NC State to also show up. It'll be a marginal difference, but nonetheless, that's one of the bigger games on the schedule for a reason. We know what Tennessee has looked like these last couple of years. They're going to be in contention for making it to the CFP. They're going to try and compete in the SEC, much different than what the ACC is going to look like. But still, Tennessee's going to bring it. They finished the season on a high note. They have a lot of offensive firepower. They have some defensive names that the country is high on. Kenton and I have some question marks. Hopefully NC State can exploit them. But NC State is going to have to show up, be creative, and when they get that opportunity to put foot on neck, there has to be no hesitation. You have to put these teams away when you feel like you have a chance to do so, or else that's when the chaos takes place. And then secondly, this Clemson game down in Death Valley. Winless down at Clemson all the way dating back to 2002. Obviously, that means Dave Doeren is winless down in Clemson. A lot of these games have been relatively non-competitive down in Clemson. I think the closest one was either the one where Bambard missed a kick, or 2 seasons ago we lost by 10 points. We had College Game Day and all that. I feel in my mind that the Clemson game, not just because it's an ACC game, but NC State, that needs to be like a bigger circle around. And I get it. You can't really circle one game on the schedule more than the others. But in my mind, if NC State wants to accomplish any of their bigger goals, it's Clemson that they're going to have to go knock off this year.
Beating Clemson definitely helps you towards every goal you have, period. You talk about being a playoff team. How do you get to the playoffs? You have an automatic bid if you win the ACC. What gives you the inside track to the ACC championship in Charlotte? Beating Clemson, period. But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. Anybody who said, hey, winning championships is easy, I would simply ask this. How come there's only one every year from each conference?
Right.
If winning championships is easy, all these conferences got 10, 15 teams, whatever, and only one can do it. If winning is easy, how come there's only one national champion every year? That's what I mean by that. This is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. Got to figure it out. Got to find a way to win in Death Valley on a team that, again, I think that they're regressing and they're headed towards a plateau where it's like, all right, this is the bottom. Maybe 9-4 is the bottom. Maybe that's their regular bottom where they can't get any lower. Maybe that's it. But I don't think they're headed in the right direction that would say like, hey, NC State doesn't have a chance. Now, do they scare me? They're still Clemson. They're still Clemson. This is not, the Island of Misfit Toys Community College. This is a real university here. This is a real championship contender from back in the day here. You have to be prepared, but this team doesn't strike me as one where I'm like, man, it's going to be a long day. This game is going to be so bad. When y'all ask my prediction, I'm going to say I hope everybody has fun because this is not that.
This year feels different in terms like if there's a good time to go down to Clemson and knock them off, it might just be this is your best opportunity to do it. You have a better roster. Clemson's roster more or less stayed the same because they don't use the transfer portal. They're going to be relying a lot on younger guys to take massive leaps forward, both on offense and defense. And of course, I say all that kind of touching on what Kenton just mentioned. It's really hard to go down and win a game at Clemson. There's a reason that they had one of the longer home winning streaks in the country before it just got snapped a couple of years ago. I think Pitt got them once, and then more recently last year, Florida State went down there and got them. It's an insane environment. If you're an NC State fan and you haven't been to a game down in Clemson, if you can, I highly encourage you make the trip because it is one of the better environments in all of college football, which makes it hell on earth for opposing teams to go in there and get the win. But this year has to be different if NC State wants to take a step forward. To be the best, you have to beat the best. It is epitomized with this road trip down to Clemson in week 4. You have to play clean football. Can't afford to beat yourself on the road, especially in a place like that, because once you do, it's over for you. There's really no coming back for if you repeatedly beat yourself against a team in a home environment like that one. So if NC State's going to get anywhere this year, they're going to have to find ways to win the big one. That's against Tennessee and Charlotte and on the road at Clemson. Coming up next, we're getting into some comments made by wide receiver coach Joker Phillips and some of the talent that has now surrounded him in that wide receiver room after a quick word from our sponsors. First sponsor of the day is Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. This makes getting tickets even faster and easier than ever before. It doesn't stop there. You can also find great value on college football tickets, being that we're just a couple weeks away. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch or kickoff. So with last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. Using these last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, they got it. Toggling their all-in pricing feature will show your total up front so you receive zero surprise fees at checkout. And as always, you can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy so you know exactly what to expect upon arrival. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets or college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, Create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, enjoy the Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussions on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics. This includes conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and so much more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Middle portion of our Wednesday show, wanted to spend some time discussing wide receiver coach Joker Phillips. Now, Coach Phillips spoke to the media this week talking about the revamped wide receiver room and what it has meant to him to see this new talent come in as a coach and how they expect it to benefit them moving forward this season. He instantly made note of this is one of the youngest but also most talented rooms that he's been a part of. This is a coach that comes out of the Urban Meyer tree. Now, I have my own opinions on Urban Meyer. I am an avid hater of Urban Meyer. However, you can't deny how much talent that Urban Meyer has coached over the years, and subsequently, so has Joker Phillips. And so for Phillips to now look around in this room and you see younger talent like Noah Rogers and Wesley Grimes, Casey Concepcion, Dakari Collins is one of the older guys in this group, and he deems this group as one of the most talented that he's coached. It seems like there's a lot to be excited about on the horizon for NC State wide receivers.
You know, I want y'all to think about something for just a second here, okay? When you talk about how good those Florida teams were, all right, and especially at the receiver position, Percy Harvin, I don't believe, was the young man who left that team and went on to the NFL to have the most receiving yards in terms of his career. Do you know who that young man was? Riley Cooper, I'm pretty sure. Riley Cooper went on to be the leader of those guys in receiving yards in terms of his entire career. But really and truly, that team was freakish in terms of how good they were at every position, but particularly receiver was one that they were loaded at. And so when you think of Joker Phillips saying, hey, this is one of the most talented groups I've ever been around, that is high praise coming from a guy who, again, he had some really, really special guys in that receivers room. And so, you know, you're looking at yourself and saying, or you're stuck with a moment where you have to say, hey, how good can this group be? I remember I was talking to somebody not too long ago about how special this wide receiver and tight end group is. And I said, the most dangerous part about this is there is not a single player in this group that I believe has no eligibility left. There isn't a single one that after this season they have to be gone. You think about bringing back this entire group for another year in the NIL system, another year knowing all this stuff. But even if we're just talking this year, Joker Phillips is absolutely right, because again, this is not just talent at the top level. This isn't just 3-4 guys that can go. This is talent so immense. So I'm very excited to see just what this talent looks like on full display when it's live action and not just practice and camp clips.
Now, there's a little bit of interesting chatter that I've heard regarding on who may or may not be starting in game one for the wide receivers. I've heard that Noah Rogers is still competing for that starting spot, and you may or may not see Dakari Collins and Wesley Grimes get that nod due to the wealth of experience that they already have at the college football level. Coach Phillips was talking a little bit about having to basically teach Noah Rogers how to play at the college level, because keep in mind, we know the talent that he has and what he can be. He hasn't played a single snap yet of college football. He has the spring game and he went through fall camp, obviously up at Ohio State, but he's yet to be on the field in a regular season game. With all that being said, I too really wouldn't be all that surprised to see Wesley Grimes and Dakari Collins lead the way out of the gate. I don't think that's any reason for panic, because with the experience that those two guys give, you probably feel really comfortable with them right out of the gate. And despite Casey Concepcion starting out of the gate last year, that was because we needed him to. The cupboard otherwise was very barren, and you saw Casey got better and better and better as the season went on. I would sort of expect Noah Rogers to be on a very similar trajectory. Maybe you don't see him right away, but once you get in the middle part of the season, perhaps that's when he truly takes off. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the older guys. Older is kind of relative, being that they're sophomores and juniors, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the older, more experienced guys lead the way when we kick this thing off.
Yeah, and either way you cut it or slice it, this isn't honestly nobody is bigger than the group, right?
Yeah.
Like this is, it's David Ruffin and the Temptations all over again. Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. It's one of those deals all over again because this is a whole group. The scary part about this team, even if we're not talking about the future, we say just for this year, what's the scariest part about them? They can send waves of players who are spectacular at you. And so with that being said, nobody's bigger than this group. I wouldn't even, and I mean this, I know some people are not going to believe me, but I wouldn't be upset or disappointed if they were like, hey, this group is so good, KC's not starting. I wouldn't be like, what?
Yeah.
KC's not? I would be like, wow, this group is really, this is a terrifying thing to think about, that we had a guy who was one of the ACC's leaders in scrimmage yards last year that is going to have to be a backup, maybe not as a rotational piece, but a backup. That's just what I would look at it as. So I'm looking at this situation. I'm saying to myself, this team's going to be just fine. They're going to do what they need to do. Noah's going to be just fine. He's going to do what he needs to do as a young man to develop and get on the field. And plus, these things generally have a way of sorting themselves out.
Right.
They generally have a way of, if a guy is uber talented, he just doesn't have the experience. As the season goes on, he figures it out, learns more, adapts, adjusts, and becomes the player that he needs to be to get more reps.
Yeah, despite experience, Noah Rogers has so much talent that it will reach a point that you can't keep him off the field. That's what I think will probably happen as the season goes on. But the main takeaway for this wide receiving group under Joker Phillips is, yes, they are young. There's some relative inexperience, but there's so much talent and there's so much depth that this is only going to improve in the long run. This could, of course, even happen as soon as this year. You could see several guys blossom as the season goes on, Noah Rogers being one of them. Maybe Jonathan Paylor, could be Keenan Jackson. There's so many different names that you feel are dangerous enough to make an impact as soon as this season in 2024. And then, of course, like Kenton was talking about, with all the remaining eligibility, you look forward to 2025 and 2026 a little bit. They're going to remain dangerous. This group will only get better with more experience, more reps, and more talent as it goes along. So the future is extremely, extremely bright for this wide receiving group. I would argue maybe brighter than any other group at NC State. And that's very high praise regarding who we have coming in at quarterback and running back these next couple of years. But the wide receiving room feels brighter than any group that I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, I have to hard agree there. I mean, the only other groups I could look at and say, like, hey, we looked at them as like they have an extremely promising future and they lived up to it, was the trio of linebackers that were signed when it was Peyton Wilson, Drake Thomas, and Isaiah Moore. That trio, we knew, like, oh, man. And I believe they were in two different classes. I want to say Drake and Isaiah were in the same class, and Peyton was in the class after them. But you knew when you saw those three on the field together, we don't got to worry about linebacker for the next few years. We don't know. That's done for. It's wrapped up. And even with injuries and all that, they still showed themselves to be the brightest. So, that this wide receiver core can achieve at that level, NC State will be just fine offensively going forward.
And speaking of talent waiting to be showcased, Sean Brown has landed on the Butkus Award watch list. How did that happen? More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple of minutes of our Wednesday show. As I just mentioned there before the break, new linebacker Sean Brown has been nominated for the Dick Butkus Award preseason watch list. That is the best linebacker in the country, notably because Peyton Wilson just won this in 2023. This surprised me in probably the best way possible. Sean Brown has very limited experience at the linebacker position. So limited, we're talking, I think it was 1 or 2 series at the very end of last year's Clemson game. This is a brand new position for him to learn. Tony Gibson, we all know, is one of the best linebacking coaches in the country. And so for Sean Brown to be on this watch list kind of blew my mind a little bit because it's such a compliment to not only his ability, but Tony Gibson's ability to coach up the linebackers. If he does reach that level of play, that's another guy that could take NC State to a new level this year.
Absolutely. And Sean Brown, when you look at why he's on this watch list, I've got 2 simple factors for you. Number one, he's the will linebacker for Tony Gibson. That's always going to be a part of it. But the second part, number 2, is that Sean Brown is a relentless effort guy. He is always on the take near the ball. He is always willing to take on bigger blockers, willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that he is where he needs to be and that he's funneling the ball back to where other guys can make a play or making a play himself. So those two things combined, I'm not shocked that he's on this watch list. Not at all. I want to see how he performs. But I'll tell you what, if there was an under-over on his tackles for the season, I'm going over 105 right now. I would go over that, and I'd feel very comfortable with that.
105 would be a really high mark to hit. He had 66 as just a safety, but yeah, his level of productivity will shoot up moving into that will linebacker spot. I can't wait to see what he actually looks like once the season begins. We know the level of talent that he displayed at the safety position, and those couple series that he moved back down to linebacker against Clemson. He held his own. I don't remember the exact number of tackles, but he had the most tackles in that period when he was on the field against Clemson. I think he had like 8 in like 2 series or something crazy like that. His ability to not only take on a new position, learn it that quickly, but flourish in that new position, I think is maybe the most impressive thing about Sean Brown. The comfortability with Tony Gibbs and the rest of the defensive coaching staff in saying, all right, well, we're going to need some help at linebacker. Is there anyone else on the team that we feel could be ready to do that? Their minds, I would have to say, almost instantly moved to Sean Brown after what he demonstrated against Clemson. So for Sean Brown to be now the 9th player, I guess we did that a day too early yesterday. He's the 9th Wolfpack player to land on a preseason watch list. To me, it's just so crazy that Sean Brown is on this award watch list. And I know, again, it's just a preseason watch list, but that's such a high compliment, I believe, for Sean Brown and this NC State defense.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. It's an absolutely high compliment for him to be on this watch list because, I mean, not everybody makes it. Everybody ain't able, as the Saints would say. He's a special young man in a system that is going to enable him to flow around freely and chase the ball down at some, whatever he can physically do, this system will allow him to be his best self in getting there. And I think that when you combine that with guys in front of him that can play, that'll do a good job of keeping him clean in Price and Van and Cleveland, you really can see something where you're like, man, I don't know where this guy came from, but he all of a sudden is jumping off the charts in terms of everything that he's doing.
I think to further conceptualize this is not me throwing shade at all. You have Devon Betty, who's been on the roster for, I think, 4 or 5 years now, and you have Caden Fordham, who I think has been with us. This will be his 3rd season at linebacker. They're not on this list. Not me throwing shade, just a fact of the matter of Sean Brown is already getting looks to be potentially one of the better linebackers in the country. And this is a brand new position for him. That's incredible. Not to beat a dead horse here, but the talent that he displayed last year in a very quick fashion, he kind of burst onto the scene. I believe it was the Virginia game. He had that extremely acrobatic interception that helped us out in a big spot. He really vaulted off his tape from that game. He's such an integral piece to this defense, and especially when you're looking at the linebackers, potentially the biggest question mark, not just on the defense, but of the entire team. Sean Brown has a massive role to fill as a will linebacker. You're not going to replace Peyton Wilson because literally no one else can, but Sean Brown putting his best foot forward and maximizing his potential as a linebacker, again, that will take NC State to the heights they want to get to this year.
Yeah, no disagreement here. I mean, there's tons of players that if they hold serve, NC State should be really good. But if they take it to another level, NC State will be great. And Sean Brown definitely falls in that category.
That'll do it for us here on Wednesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments down in the comment box. Tell us what you think about NC State's propensity to win the big game, especially this year in 2024. Tell us what you think about Joker Phillips and the new talent he surrounded himself with in the wide receiver room. And tell us what you think about Sean Brown being nominated preseason watch list for the Dick Butkus Trophy. Does that seem as crazy to you as it does to me? If it does, let us know down in the comments. Mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We will see you all back here tomorrow on Thursday. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.